Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Storytime with Grandma Kate. And today it's Storytime with Grandma Kate and Aditi. Aditi jumped up just as I was getting ready to read to you today. So I thought she could join us while we read Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins. This is the middle of Hanukkah. Hanukkah lasts 8 nights, and it's a wonderful Jewish celebration that happens every December, usually right around Christmas time. So I'm going to be reading you a story about a man named Herschel who saves this town by being brave enough to stay in an old synagogue. And every night every night of Hanukkah these goblins visit him to try to blow out the Hanukkah candles, and so we'll see if Herschel's brave enough to save Hanukkah for his city that he lives in. If you're not familiar with the celebration of Hanukkah, I'll put some links in the description below so you can learn a little bit more about why Hanukkah is 8 days long, and maybe some of the other traditions that people celebrate during this festive time. It's called a season of lights. At Christmas time, we always put up a lot of lights. And in this book, you're going to see Herschel with what's called a menorah. There's 4 on this side, 4 on this side, little candles, one for each night of Hanukkah. And then in the middle, there's one candle that's lit every night. And that's called the Shamash candle, which he's holding in his hand right now. And that one lights all the other ones. So you'll see him using that menorah. Here's another picture of it right here in this book. We'll read this one together. It's called Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins by Eric Kimmel, illustrated by Trina Shart Hyman. If we can get the light figured out here. Sometimes when I'm recording these videos, it's tricky to figure that out, but let's give this one a try. It was the first night of Hanukkah, and Herschel of Ostrupel was walking down the road. He was tired and hungry. Nonetheless, his footsteps were light. Soon he would reach the next village where bright candles, merry songs, and platters piled high with tasty potato latkes awaited him. A potato latke is like a potato pancake. We used to make those when I was a school teacher. We'd enjoy them around Hanukkah time. They're kind of like hash browns, I think. But when he arrived in the village, it was silent and dark. Not a single Hanukkah candle could be seen. You can see the village right here. It's very quiet. Isn't tonight the first night of Hanukkah? Herschel asked the villagers. We don't have Hanukkah, Herschel, one of them answered sadly. No Hanukkah? How can that be? It's because of the goblins. They haunt the old synagogue at the top of the hill. They hate Hanukkah, and whenever we try to light a menorah, the goblins blow out the candles. They break our dreidels. Those are like little tops, like a game they play. And they throw our potato latkes on the floor. Those wicked goblins make our lives miserable all year long, but on Hanukkah, it's really bad. Herschel knew he must help the village people. I'm not afraid of goblins, he said. Tell me how to get rid of them. It's not as easy as you think, the rabbi warned. Let's see, here's the rabbi. He's like the church leader. Like if you go to church and you have a pastor or a minister, a rabbi is like the leader of the synagogue. The synagogue is a Jewish church. You must spend 8 nights in the old synagogue, and the Hanukkah candles must be lit each night. On the 8th night, the king of the goblins must light them himself. That is the only way to break their power. I'm not afraid, Rabbi, Herschel said. If I can't outwit a few goblins, then my name isn't Herschel of Ostrupel. The villagers wished Herschel good luck. They had no potato latkes to give him, so they packed several hard-boiled eggs for him to eat, along with a big jar of pickles. The rabbi gave Herschel a brass menorah, a package of candles, and a box of matches. Then the villagers said goodbye. Nobody expected to see Herschel again. It was long past sundown by the time Herschel climbed to the top of the hill where the old synagogue stood. The crumbling building was gloomy and dark, and rusty hinges squealed as Herschel opened the door. Herschel shuddered. That means he shook. Well, he could believe goblins lived there. He put 2 candles in the menorah and set it in the windowsill. He struck a match and lit the shamash candle. He said the blessings and was about to light the other candle when he heard a voice.
Hey, what are you doing?
Herschel turned around. Here was a goblin no bigger than a horsefly, with a long pointy tail and 2 little bat's wings hovering in the air. I'm lighting Hanukkah candles, Herschel said. Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah.
Oh, no, it's not. We don't allow Hanukkah, not around here.
Is that so? Said Herschel. Who's going to stop me? A little pipsqueak like you? I may be little, but I'm strong, said the goblin. Oh, really? Can you crush rocks in your hands? Asked Herschel. The goblin laughed. Crush rocks? You're joking. Nobody's that strong. I am. Watch. Herschel took a hard-boiled egg from his pocket and squeezed it until the yolk ran from and the white ran through his fingers. That's how hard I'm going to squeeze you if you try to stop me from lighting these candles. The little goblin's eyes opened wide, since in the dim light the egg looked exactly like a rock. The little goblin shook with fear.
You leave me alone,
he squeaked. Gladly, said Herschel, if you let me light my candles in peace. All right, said the goblin. One night won't make a difference, but you better not be here tomorrow. Big scary goblins are coming, much bigger than I, and if they catch you lighting Hanukkah candles, you'll be sorry. We'll see about that, Herschel said to himself, and he lit the first candle. On the second night, another goblin appeared. You can see him right here. This one was big and fat and waddled like a goose. Herschel was finishing his dinner of pickles and hard-boiled eggs. Have some pickles, he said to the goblin. Pickles? Here, catch. Herschel tossed him a sour pickle. The goblin caught it in his mouth and swallowed it. Pickles are good. Do you like them? I've plenty in this jar. Take all you want. The greedy goblin grabbed as many pickles as his claws could hold, but when he tried to pull his fist out of the jar, he couldn't. I'm stuck, the goblin shouted. You put a spell on this jar to hold me fast. You're right, Herschel said, laughing, and it's a very powerful spell. You came here tonight to stop me from lighting Hanukkah candles. So now I'm going to light them while you stand there with your hand in that jar and watch. How do you like that? No, no, the goblin screamed. I hate Hanukkah. Well, too bad. You'll have to get used to it. Herschel said the blessings and lit the candles slowly. Probably did it slowly just to make that goblin really mad. Then he sang all his favorite Hanukkah songs. The goblin wailed and carried on so much that Herschel finally decided to let him go. Shall I tell you how to break the spell? Yes, yes, I can't stand it anymore. Then let go of the pickles. Your greed is the only spell holding you prisoner. The goblin let go of the pickles, and his hand slipped right out of the jar easily. How that goblin raged! He had stood with his hand in a pickle jar while Herschel lit Hanukkah candles right under his nose. The furious goblin stamped his foot so hard he shattered into a million pieces, and the wind blew them away. The third night came, and Herschel felt something watching him as he set the candles in the menorah. Instead of lighting them, he began playing with the dreidel. An hour passed, and Herschel looked up. Sitting across the table was another goblin. This one had a fiery red face and 2 enormous horns. It's getting late, the goblin said. When are you going to light those candles? Later, there's plenty of time. Herschel spun his dreidel. This is more fun. It's like a little top. You spin it, and then there's Hebrew letters on each side, and each one means something different. But Hershel's going to trick this goblin. If you know how to play the dreidel, see how Hershel tricks him. Let's see, what are you playing with? The goblin asked. It looks like a top. It's a dreidel. Don't you know about dreidels? No. Too bad. Dreidels are lots of fun. You can also make lots of money if you know how to play. Really? The goblin was interested now. All goblins like money, and this one was no exception. How do you play? It's very simple, Hershel said, but you must have gold. That's the first rule. I have plenty. Is this enough? The goblin poured a pile of gold coins on the table. Oh, that's fine, Hershel said. Now listen carefully. This letter is a shin. If it comes up, you give me a handful of gold. This letter is hey. If it comes up, you give me half your gold. This letter is gimel. If the dreidel falls on this letter, you give me all your gold. Understand? Wait, there's one letter left. How about this one? Oh, well, that's none. And if the dreidel falls on none, I don't give you anything. Are you ready? Let's play. You go first. The goblin spun the dreidel. The little top whirled round and round. And when it fell, the letter on top was shin. Ah, too bad, Hershel said, taking a big handful of the goblin's gold. Try again. Maybe you'll have better luck. The goblin spun the dreidel once more, and this time it fell on hay. This isn't your night, Hershel said, helping himself to half the goblin's gold. One more time, your luck is bound to improve. And once again, the goblin spun. This time, the dreidel landed on gimel. Too bad, Hershel sighed as he took the rest of the goblin's gold. Would you like me to spin? Yes, the goblin grumbled. He was very unhappy about losing his money. Hershel spun the dreidel, and this time the letter nun was on top. Oh my, I don't give you anything. I get to keep all the gold. Say, that was fun. Why don't you go get some more gold and we'll play again? What about the Hanukkah candles? Oh, we'll light them later. There's plenty of time. Not for me, the goblin said. I'm leaving now. I don't like this game. I don't like Hanukkah, and I don't like you. Don't go, Hershel pleaded. I know lots of games. Stay a while. We'll have fun. Goodbye. The goblin spread his wings, swooped out the door, and flew off into the night. And Hershel lit the candles all by himself. On the following nights, the other goblins came. One had 6 heads. One had 3 eyes. All were terrible and fierce. They growled and roared and changed themselves into horrible shapes. They tried to stop Hershel from lighting the Hanukkah candles, but Hershel fooled them all. Finally, the 7th night arrived. 8 tiny candles flickered on the windowsill. Hershel sat back to enjoy their light. Where were the goblins? Had they finally given up? Hershel felt very sleepy. His eyes closed, and suddenly he sat up. He heard a horrible sound, a voice that sounded like the cracking of bones. Happy Hanukkah, Hershel of Ostropol. Who is it? Who's there? Don't you know who I am, Hershel? Weren't you expecting the king of the goblins? The voice rose to a hurricane roar. It ripped the shingles from the synagogue roof and shattered the windows. The Hanukkah candles reeled in the savage blast, but they did not go out. You're too early, Hershel shrieked. You're not supposed to come until tomorrow. The great wind died down. Don't worry, Hershel. I am far away, but I have the power to see you and to speak to you. Enjoy this Hanukkah evening, my friend. It will be your last. Tomorrow night I will come for you. You fooled my slaves, the other goblins. Let's see if you can fool me. Poor Herschel, what was he to do? The king of the goblins was on his way, and no power on earth could stop him. Unless, unless Herschel had an idea. It was a big chance, but he had to take it. It was the only way to save himself and Hanukkah. It was the last night of Hanukkah. Herschel set the candles in the menorah, but instead of placing it on the windowsill, he put the menorah and the box of matches on a small table near the door, and then he sat down to wait. Night fell. It grew dark as pitch inside the gloomy old synagogue. Outside, the whole world lay cold and silent. Suddenly, a great gust ripped the synagogue door from its hinges. The whole building shook, and a fearsome voice spoke. Herschel of Ostrapol. Did I hear something? It is I, the king of the goblins. Herschel laughed. Don't be silly. You're one of the boys from the village. You're just trying to scare me. I am not a boy. I am the king of the goblins. I'll believe it when I see it. Show yourself to me. Behold, I stand before you. Don't you believe me now? Herschel tried not to look. Even in the darkness, he could see the outline of a monstrous shape filling the doorway, a figure too horrible to describe. He pretended not to care. It's too dark. I can't see anything. A candlestick and some matches are by the doorway. Why don't you light a few candles, and then I'll see what you really are. Indeed you shall. A match flared. The shamus candle caught the flame. Herschel's blood turned to water at the awful sight before him, but he did not lose courage. Master of the world, he silently prayed, thou who created the heavens and the earth and the spirits of the air, stand by me now. Then he addressed the goblin. It's still too dark. What are you afraid of? There are plenty of candles. Why not light them all? A hideous hand took the shamus candle and lit the others one by one. Herschel felt himself growing faint, but he forced himself to look. His eyes grew wider and wider as each candle caught the flame. 6, 7, 8. The king of the goblins stood before him. Now, Herschel, do you know who I am? Well, I know you're not Queen Esther. Very funny. Enjoy the joke. It will be your last. That's what you think. Be gone, or I'll take a stick to you. How dare you speak to the king of the goblins that way? I will speak to you any way I please. You have no power. Your spell is broken. See, the menorah is lit. You thought those were ordinary candles you were lighting. They weren't. They were Hanukkah candles, and you lit them yourself. The king of the goblins roared with fury. The earth trembled and a mighty wind rose. It ripped off the synagogue roof and blew down the walls. It splintered the great timbers and scattered them like matchsticks. Around the menorah, the whirlwind howled, but the candles never flickered. They burned with clear, steady flames. The king of the goblins had no power over them. The spirit of Hanukkah had triumphed. I'll show you. That's hard to see it because it's such a teeny little thing. But there's a teeny tiny little picture of the menorah with the candles still lit. See, there you can see it better on this page. The great wind vanished as suddenly as it had risen. Herschel rubbed his eyes. The night was as still as before, even though the synagogue was gone. Walls, floor, roof, even the foundation stones had vanished. But the menorah remained, standing tall upon the little table where Herschel had placed it. Herschel waited until the last candle burned out, and then he started down the road that led to the village. I'd better hurry, he thought. I don't want to miss the last night of Hanukkah. But there was no reason to worry. In every window there stood a menorah with 9 gleaming candles to light the way. The whole village was waiting for him. Isn't that a neat story? Hanukkah is such a wonderful celebration of light. What I like especially about this story is that Herschel was very courageous. Being courageous doesn't mean you're not scared. A lot of the times having courage means you're scared to death, but you do it anyway. I also think he was pretty clever too. He was a pretty clever little fellow. So I hope you enjoyed listening to Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Have a wonderful day and happy Hanukkah.